A lot of my biggest insecurities started when I was quite young. For a long time, I was taller than most of the kids in my grade. I weighed a lot more because of my height. And I was kind of an awkward looking kid for quite a long time. But I was so hard on myself that this eventually started to go into bigger insecurities and eventually an eating disorder or two. So in this picture, you'll see that I'm like 12 or 13 years old. I was just starting 7th grade. And this is when I really started to look at myself at the worst ways possible. This was when I weighed my heaviest at 188 pounds, and I really started to exercise in the worst ways possible. I wouldn't eat for as much as I should have. I exercised way, way too much, and like every single day of the week. I was really insecure about the way I looked, so I would run anywhere from like 2 to 6 miles a day just to burn off calories and to try and lose weight. I would go on diets quite often, and they always failed. And another thing that I did frequently was every time I had too big of a meal, I would throw it up and cause a lot of problems for me. I started to work out because I hated myself and the way I looked, and I felt like I could never really be comfortable with who I am. 8th grade started to come around, and this was my track picture from 8th grade. And this is when I started to become bulimic. This was an easy way for me to lose weight and eat whatever I want because I knew that at the end of the day I would have thrown it up already. What I now realize is the scariest part is I started seeing results and I started losing weight. And that's where the addiction of losing weight really started to come in. This picture was taken in July of 2015 at my lowest weight in years at 154 pounds. 154 pounds might seem like a pretty okay weight, but when you take into consideration that my hair was falling out, my teeth were starting to become unstable, and I was constantly dizzy, it's not a great weight to think of anymore. This family trip specifically, I remember we went out to dinner one night and I binge ate, and later that night I took laxative pills without my parents knowing. The next day I found out I took too many because I started throwing up constantly and there was some blood, and I was sick for days after that. My only real goal in life was to become thin at this point. I constantly thought about food. It was an obsessive thought. It was always in my mind just because I was so hungry all the time. And when I couldn't focus on anything other than food, I would go to the gym, which made me feel absolutely so faint and unable to work out. I was so unstable. Almost 2 years ago, I finally reached out to my parents and got help because I was so faint all the time and I was tearing myself down so much mentally that I couldn't focus on anything else other than my body. At first, my parents were confused and concerned and worried and didn't really know how to help. But the only real thing they could do at the time was bring me to a doctor and see what would go from there. In this picture, actually, this was 2 or 3 months after I finally started to get help. At the doctor's, I was diagnosed with bulimia, depression, and anxiety. This is when I started taking medication for my depression and anxiety. I also started to care less about working out every single day of the week, and I started to care less about what I ate. But my abstinence from my body and my mind eventually led into my second eating disorder. I started to binge eat because I felt that I could eat whatever I want, and if I worked out, then it would be okay. Eventually, I gained all the weight back, and some in fat, some in muscle, but all the same, I felt bad about myself again. The weight gain was actually a good and a bad thing because the good side was that I started to actually not feel dizzy anymore and to start being able to do everyday things. But it was also bad because I started to not nourish myself in the right ways that I should have been. The binge eating didn't last too long because 2 or 3 months in, I started to see a therapist for the first time, and it really started to help. This picture was taken about 3 or 4 months ago, on the day that I got cleared of my binge eating disorder. So as of today, I've been clear of my binge eating disorder for about 9 months and my bulimia disorder for about a year and a half. Eating disorders can go unrecognized and unnoticed, but that doesn't mean they're not there. Exercise means a lot to me. It's a stress reliever and a confidence builder. Anyone can start exercising and no one should be afraid to be a beginner. You should exercise because you love yourself, not because you hate yourself. Exercise can be a very personal thing due to your past. In my case, working out can make or break in my day. But it's all about taking things slow and taking care of yourself. Don't set extreme expectations for yourself right away. Things might be a little shaky, but at the end of the day, you are left with yourself, and being the best of yourself should be the most important.